Hey guys, Phil here. Well, here we are, the end of 2019, and so I thought it'd be a good time to kind of take a look back. I noticed the Watchtower recently had an article about 100 years ago, 1919 there, and I thought that would be a good way to do it. So I wanted to kind of imagine a Bible student from 1919 walking into the Kingdom Hall this Sunday and thinking about what his beliefs would be compared to the average JW sitting in the hall. And we'll see that they're just a tad different. Well, for one thing, he would believe that phrenology is a real science. The idea that by feeling the bumps on your head and the shape of your skull indicates what's going on inside your skull and the type of qualities and brain power that you possess. Completely debunked nowadays, of course, but was advocated by the Bible students back in the day. Another thing our friend from 1919 would believe is that vaccines are bad. The society was really down on vaccines back then. They would fit right in with the anti-vax crowd of 2019. On the other hand, they would believe that radium is great. Getting that radioactivity as close as possible to your body was really the key to vibrant health. And they advocated wearing a radium belt around your waist. In fact, I just read an article in the Golden Age, the precursor to the Awake magazine, and it's mentioned that you could take your radium belt and wrap it around a drinking glass and let the radiation go into your drinking water, and then you could drink it to really get the full positive beneficial effects of the radioactivity inside your body as well as from wearing the belt on the outside. Our Bible student would also talk about how your hair, a hair is actually a tube filled with oil. And so people go bald because when you cut your hair, you cut off the end of the tube and all the oil leaks out of your head, and then the hairs die. And so that's why men go bald so often, is because they get haircuts so frequently. It kills their hair. And that's why this society really recommended against women cutting their hair, against especially getting bobbed haircuts, because same problem. All the hair oil would leak out of their hair tubes and they would go bald. Now our Bible student of 1919 would tell us that radios were foretold in the Bible. The prophets talked about radio technology. They also talked about trains and locomotives. Those were foretold in the Bible. He would tell us that the Great Pyramid of Giza, Egypt, was God's stone witness. So basically, Jehovah God provided the Bible, the book, the Bible, but then he also provided basically the second Bible, the Great Pyramid of Egypt, and all its hallways and passages were measured precisely to explain various prophetic time periods down through history. Now, how about religious beliefs? Well, a Bible student would tell us that obviously the Catholic Church is pretty much the most evil organization on the earth. And so when the magazines would talk about the Ku Klux Klan, well, the Catholic Church opposed the KKK, so automatically that makes the Ku Klux Klan better than the Catholic Church. The KKK, the magazines explain, not too bad of an organization, definitely better than the Catholic Church. Our Bible student would tell us that Bible students celebrate Christmas, that Jesus died on a cross. He would explain how the American flag should be flown at your home. And in fact, he would tell us that Jesus Christ should be worshiped right alongside Jehovah God. And what can we say about the structural organization of the Bible students of the society back then? Well, as we mentioned, the name is not Jehovah's Witnesses. The name of Jehovah's people is the Bible students. And when you go to the meeting, there are testimony meetings. There's not service meetings and public talks and all that. There's testimony meetings. And basically, it was kind of a free-form time when people could share a good experience or talk about how they could see God's outworking in their life. They could suggest that everybody sings a song, or they could give a prayer or ask that somebody prays for them. And in these ways would give their testimony that Jehovah was helping them. The society was run by a president, Rutherford at the time. Governing body, not a thing. Governing body is never mentioned in the Bible. The society is run by one man, a president, just like Moses ran the nation of Israel back in the day. Now there's elders in each local congregation, but they're not appointed by the society. No, each year the entire congregation votes to elect the elders for the next year. And that's how things are done. Our Bible student of 1919 tells us about the great problems with Earth's atmosphere, that nitrogen is bad and oxygen is good. When Adam and Eve were created, the Earth had an atmosphere of 100% oxygen, and that was great. That was the key to eternal life. However, bummer, Adam and Eve sinned. They introduced imperfection. They introduced death into the world by their sin, and now things started dying on the earth. And as their bodies decomposed, they emitted nitrogen gas. Therein started all the problems, because nitrogen is bad for life. When the flood happened, man, then you really had problems, because there were dead bodies all over the place, rotting and emitting tons and tons of nitrogen gas into the atmosphere. And so as the nitrogen increased and the oxygen decreased, there goes your eternal life. And so the lifespans of mankind went from 970 some years down to where we're at in 1919, 60 years, 70 years, all because the oxygen is down to 20% of the atmosphere now. Way different than the 100% that Adam and Eve were able to breathe. But there is hope, because after Armageddon, the earth is going to be turned into a paradise. And guess what? Nitrogen is used as a fertilizer. And so as the desert parts of the earth are irrigated and terraformed, things are going to start to grow. And all that nitrogen that's just waiting for us in the atmosphere is going to go into the soil. It's going to make it super fertile and enable the earth to turn back into a paradise. And serendipitously, the oxygen level then will increase in the atmosphere. And guess what? Lifespans are going to go up thanks to all that extra oxygen. And by the time of the end of the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ, why, the atmosphere will be right back to 100% oxygen. And guess what? Mankind will thus be able to live forever. All that nasty nitrogen will be gone, because there's really no downsides at all that I can think of to a 100% oxygen atmosphere. Our Bible student would also tell us, there's so many good things he could tell us. He would explain that in the global flood, there was a great ring or a canopy of water around the earth that fell. Now around the equator, where it was warmest, it did fall as rain. But in the higher latitudes to the north and south, the water actually fell as snow onto the earth. And so that explains why the North Pole and the South Pole have so much snow and ice these days. It's just left over from the great snowstorms of the deluge, the great global flood that happened. However, after Armageddon, the earth's going to warm up again, going to turn green all over. And in fact, the Garden of Eden, which was buried under all the snow and ice from the flood, well, it's going to thaw out. And once all the snow melts, the Garden of Eden will be revealed again to us. And guess what? Adam and Eve are going to be resurrected after Armageddon, and they'll be able to move right back into the Garden of Eden as they originally started out. He can tell us too that in the paradise, all humans will be speaking Esperanto. And in fact, certain Bible students that could speak Esperanto started up classes in the 1920s to teach other Bible students Esperanto and kind of get a jump so they'd be all set for the new system. He would tell us that Jerusalem in Israel is going to be the world capital. And that's where all the Bible patriarchs will live: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses. And they'll run the world from Jerusalem. How will they do that? Well, by radio. They'll direct everybody on the earth by sending out radio transmissions, radio broadcasts, and thus be able to bring things back to its original paradise conditions. Now, mainly things will be done by radio, but humans will be able to travel then. The thing is, it will be much easier to travel because you won't have to travel horizontally anymore. Instead, we'll travel vertically. And so basically, if you're in New York City, you shoot straight up in your conveyance, your ship, and you just hang there. Meanwhile, the earth is rotating underneath you, and you just come right down again, and you land in China, thanks to the earth's rotation. And so travel will be so easy after Armageddon. And when would that happen? Well, our Bible student in 1919 would explain everything is coming in just 6 years. 1925 will be when the world erupts in anarchy, Jesus steps in, and paradise will be coming in that year. And so when Rutherford published his book and gave his talks that millions now living will never die, that's why he could say that, because it was only 6 years before the earth would see paradise arrive. So those are some of the major beliefs of our Bible student from 100 years ago, 1919. And so there's a lot of things in there that if he were to get up on the platform at the Kingdom Hall this weekend and start talking about this stuff, I mean, he would sound bonkers, right? Now we could say, yeah, but that was 100 years ago. A lot of things have changed since then. And that's true. So let's not go so extreme. Let's go only 50 years in the past. So we go back to 1969. So our Jehovah's Witness from 1969, 50 years ago, walks into the Kingdom Hall this weekend. And what does he have to tell us? Well, obviously there's much fewer differences than our Bible student from 100 years ago. But I think you'll agree that there's still some pretty significant differences. So this witness is going to tell us that organ transplants are forbidden by the Bible. They are banned. And in fact, witnesses should view them as cannibalism if you get an organ transplant. In fact, the surgeons that are doing organ transplants, why they are working under demon influence in doing these terrible operations. Now he'll tell us that blood transfusions are bad, that they're forbidden for Jehovah's Witnesses. Now that's the same as today, but he'll explain that it's not just because of Acts 15:29 and respect for life and all that. It's because the blood carries evil tendencies of human beings. And so if you have a guy with bad thoughts, with bad inclinations, and you get a blood transfusion from him, those bad tendencies are now in you, and they're going to influence you to do evil things in your life. So no blood. Blood fractions, absolutely forbidden by the Bible. No blood fractions can be taken. No blood transfusions. No ifs, ands, or buts. Our witness from 1969 would tell us that when you go door to door, you sell the Watchtower and Awake magazines. We don't ask for donations. We want cash from the householder. Same thing when you're at the conventions. The society is going to be selling food there, and you're going to pay money for the food that they are selling to you. When we think about the structure of the religion, of the organization, well, pretty much the same as our 1919 guy. There is a president running the Watchtower Society. He has his vice president, he has his board of directors, but there's no governing body running Jehovah's Witnesses. That's not a thing in the Bible. There's a president, one man at the helm. And what do we find in the congregation? Well, the body of elders, gone. Now we see certain men appointed by the society in each congregation. There's a congregation servant that basically runs everything in the congregation. Then there's an assistant congregation servant to help him out. And there's a Bible study servant to help organize all the Bible study activity. But body of elders, that's not a thing. And when does our 1969 brother think that Armageddon is coming? Well, you guessed it, 6 years in the future. 1975 is when everything's going to happen. That's 6,000 years from the start of man's existence, and how appropriate it would be for the millennial reign to begin in 1975. And really that fits in perfectly with the generation teaching of 1969, that the generation that was around in 1914 to see the end of the Gentile times will be alive when Armageddon comes. And really that makes perfect sense because they're only around 70 years old here in 1969. It all fits together perfectly. So if our brother from 1969 was to get up on the platform this Sunday and start telling us that organ transplants are banned, that blood fractions are banned, that you give out the magazines for money, that the society doesn't have a governing body, doesn't have a body of elders, it's run by a president, by a congregation servant, and that the generation of 1914 will be alive before when Armageddon comes. Again, those are discarded teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses, and somebody that's advocating them now in 2019, if he keeps advocating them, he will be disfellowshipped because he's not in line with current teachings. Okay, well, let's return now back to the present day. And here we are again back in good old 2019. We've seen a lot of changes in Jehovah's Witnesses and the organization and the beliefs. I think we could safely say that Jehovah's Witnesses have changed more in 140 years than the Catholic Church has in 2,000 years. It's been a really rapid evolution of structure and teachings. And so now from 2019, let's skip forward in the future and see what happens. So let's say we skip forward 50 years. That'll bring us to the year 2069. And so when we think of the Jehovah's Witnesses from 2069, think about them going back 100 years. And so now they're thinking about the 1969 witnesses. Well, probably like we think of 1919, and it's almost unrecognizable as the same religion, and honestly sounds pretty bonkers, most of the teachings. That's probably how those witnesses of future are going to look back at 1969. It's going to look bonkers to them. I think we can say that the very highest level teachings are probably still be present. You know, you're worshiping a God named Jehovah, that there's going to be Armageddon, followed by a paradise where people will live forever on earth, and some people are going to heaven. That'll probably still be the same. But drilling down any deeper into the organization, we'll see major changes in the future. So if we're in 2069 here, and now we think back 50 years, And that'll bring us back here to 2019. Well, it's interesting to think about the changes from 2019 to 1969, major changes in the organization. The way that the society was structured and run, both the highest levels and also in the congregation, is completely changed to our day right now. And so it's probably safe to say that 50 years in the future, the structure of the organization will again be completely different. Will the governing body still exist? Will the bodies of elders still exist? We'll have to see. They didn't exist 50 years ago. We think too about the teachings of 50 years ago, completely discarded. The 1975 teaching, the teaching of the generation of 1914, those are gone. Those are almost disavowed by the organization today. And so when we think about the teachings right now, overlapping generations and when the end will come so soon around the corner, again, those will probably also be gone, completely discarded for the witnesses of 2069. And then we can turn our attention to the literature, the publications. And so we think about those 2069 brothers and sisters. Now, if we think about right now, the Watchtower Library online goes back 70 years, basically. So those 2069 witnesses, they'll have references perhaps going back to the year 2000 would be the same setup. So you think about that. Anything before 2000, that's gone. The society doesn't even offer access to those publications. Now, the 2019 publications will still be available online, that kind of thing. But just as we think of the publications of 1969, that's probably how they're going to be thinking about these 2019 publications that exist, that are current teaching right now. There'll be kind of a novelty, a curiosity for some witnesses at that time. And that's about it. Nobody's going to be using them in talks. They're old. They're useless publications. And probably much as the literature servants from just a couple years ago here got a letter to purge out older publications they had in their stocks and to destroy those publications, probably our 2069 literature servants are going to be getting a similar letter that if they have any 2019 books and brochures still sitting around, pull those out of the Kingdom Hall, take them out back, and burn them in a bonfire. Those publications are garbage and need to be gotten rid of. All right, well, enough 2069. Let's come back to our day, to 2019. It's kind of thought-provoking to think about what future witnesses will view, how they'll view our day in 2019. That the teachings most of them will be discarded. And so it kind of raises some questions today. What reasons are there to believe what is being taught today? Because the teachings of 2019 will be gone. They will be old light, and witnesses in the future will believe completely different teachings. And the same way with the literature of today. You know, right now there's witnesses that risk imprisonment, they risk their life even to get this literature, to smuggle it into banned countries and get it to congregations that really want it. And yet the witnesses of 2069 are going to be taking these same publications and throwing them in the trash. They are going to be garbage to the witnesses of the future. How can these publications be of such high value right now and be garbage in the future? Is there any reason really to stake your life on what they say if they'll be tossed away down the road? So that's pretty much what I wanted to say, just thinking both looking back into the past and taking a little glimpse into the future of Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's kind of interesting to think about how things are right now and how it fits into that continuum. Well, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you would like to, and I'll catch you all in the next video next year.